So I promised I would cover keto, so let's do it. What is the keto diet? Keto is short for ketogenic, but what does that mean? So the body derives most of its fuel from glucose. So at a cellular level, things are operating with glucose as the primary driver. When we talk about a ketogenic diet, we're switching the fuel source to something called ketone body, which are an end product of fat. So why do we do this? The ketogenic diet was actually developed decades ago by a child neurologist who was looking for an innovative way to help children who had seizure disorders. He theorized that if he changed the fuel source to the brain from glucose to ketones, that this might have a stabilizing effect on the brain for these seizures. He was right. He tested this in a large group of children, and when he had them in a purely ketogenic state, it did have a moderating effect on the seizures. How he did this was a very difficult diet to adhere to. And also at the time, people didn't really understand the huge detrimental impact that very high amounts of saturated fats could have. But for children who had seizures, it was still really a good start. So if ketones come from fat, glucose basically comes from everything else. Glucose comes from carbohydrates. All carbohydrates are eventually broken down and we end up with glucose one way or another. In addition, if we only were on a protein diet, we would still get glucose through a process called gluconeogenesis, which is why the ketogenic diet oftentimes is misunderstood. Sometimes people think of the ketogenic diet as a super high protein diet. It's not, because if there's an excess of protein, you'll still end up with glucose and not be in ketosis. So the ketogenic diet is one where the majority of the calories come from some form of fat. We often use undigestible fibers with that now that there's so many out there, so that there's some variety. And we use very low carbohydrate foods with the fat. So green vegetables, fat, some amount of protein, but not an excess of protein. That's the combination that gets you into ketosis. So here's how your day could look like on a ketogenic diet. And I want to start off by saying the way I do it is very different than you might see on the internet or other diet books, because I am thoughtful about what the fat source is. So I don't like a diet that's all animal fat or a preponderance of animal fat, because I'm concerned about what the long-term health consequences of that are. For example, in a traditional ketogenic diet, breakfast might be lots of bacon and a couple of eggs. There's some protein, but more fat, no carbohydrates. For me, that might be some cauliflower with avocado and some olive oil. When I experimented with the ketogenic diet, because I try anything that's out there if I think it can be done in a healthy way, particularly when I'm dealing with patients that want to try the ketogenic diet. I've had many who've successfully done it, but it's hard to do it in a really healthful way. So I had to think about what products were out there and what things could help me get there. I found that nut butters were helpful, lots of avocado was helpful, and having good healthy oils available, plant-based oils, was very helpful in keeping me in ketosis. What's really great is there are relatively healthy keto breads where you can put them in the air fryer or the toaster and they taste pretty good. They might have a flour base that isn't flour. So it's not a carbohydrate-based flour such as almond or cassava root or a combination of the two. And then there's usually some egg in there to bind it all together. And they've gotten it pretty down. So I might have a slice of that bread with some almond butter. I might have some animal-based protein source. It really depends. So I did it for 3 months. I eat generally a plant-based diet. I did have some more animal products to keep me in ketosis just because I needed them for the variety, but I still found a way to have a lot of plant-based things. So for breakfast, I always had like an avocado base, and I would use my plant-based protein shake that's very low in carbs, and I would add something fat to it. Either a healthy oil, and there's a lot of options out there. I happen to like pumpkin seed oil. It's actually good for the prostate. Sometimes I might add an avocado to it to make it really creamy, and I usually would put some greens in there as well. That would be a great breakfast for me. Sometimes if I needed just something a little extra because I was going for a run or to the gym, I might have a hard-boiled egg. That's where the extra animal-based food might come in. For lunch, it would be a variety of things, but I'm fortunate that my office is next to this really great healthy place that makes salads. And so I would get a salad that always had good oil, avocado in it. I might add some salmon to it because you have some protein there, but some healthy fat. So a salmon Caesar salad, that was one of my go-tos for the period of time I was on this diet. And then dinner, I would come up with whatever combination of things just felt good. I was very into sort of riced cauliflower for a while because that I could add pesto to that. I could add tofu to that. I could add other protein sources to that were maybe high in fat. Tofu, by the way, was one of the ones I liked, jackfruit, things like that. And again, if I felt like I wasn't getting quite enough protein, I'd add a little animal protein or some fish to it. And also make sure that there was always extra fat because I would check those urine strips 3 times a day to make sure that I was in ketosis. I did this for about 3 months. I wasn't trying to get some end result. I just wanted to lose a little bit of that belly that had accumulated because I never had it before. And many of my patients told me that over COVID, the same thing happened to them. I think we were snacking more than we thought. We were watching more TV than we probably realized, and it just sort of happened. So I ran into some people that I hadn't seen in a while, and they're like, wow, what are you doing? Are you weightlifting all the time? And I always exercise, but because really most of my body fat had completely melted off of me, it gave me this sort of shredded look that I know bodybuilders aim to have when they do a keto type diet. And eventually I actually stopped the diet because I was losing all of my body fat and I didn't want to lose more of it, but it really was effective. I'd have to say that another effect for me is I felt really energized on the diet. I feel like it gave me a little jump start. And so when I transitioned off the diet, because it isn't meant to be a diet you're on forever, I'd say that the 3 months I was on was about the most I recommend for people. And then I have them transition into a healthier, low-carb diet, not ketogenic, but again, low in those carbohydrates and starches and sugars that give the body a problem anyway. I'm Dr. Dan Monti. Be well.